We decided at NCPF that this is a very important topic and that we need to try to address some of the issues relevant to policy. And of course, I'll give just 10 minutes of an overview. And we know that's important because it is on the cover of every single newspaper that has came out in the past 2 to 3 years. So that tells us how impactful this field is, and accordingly, how important for us to actually think of what needs to be done from a policy perspective, particularly that it hasn't been moving as fast as the field itself. Now, the field has moved extremely slowly at the beginning, but at the end, it became extremely fast, that since 2011 until now, we know that there has been so many approvals from FDA that really did not match any of the previous approval years regarding both the agents and the diseases. Now, we know that the field and the drugs have been working extremely well. This is just one example of the early publications of this field, which is in anti-PD-1 effect in melanoma. But again, no one expected that this will happen that fast and that impactful. And based on that, it is important for us to start thinking of the different ways that the field needs to go for the next 5, 10, or 15 years. Now, we know that, and I'll go this just to mention that at the end of the day, what we need is to make those T cells work better within the microenvironment of the tumor. And what we need is to tip the balance and make the effector arm work well and the suppressor arm within the immune system work less. So based on that, the different areas of immune therapy that we are going to be addressing during this workshop are the cancer vaccines, the T-cell therapy, and the immune modulating agents, whether they're large antibodies or small molecules. Now, these are the 3 main areas. I added the 4th because the 4th is or should be considered also as an area, because the combinations therapy in immune therapy is not like combination therapy of chemotherapy or other agents that we used to know. When we combine X and Y, it doesn't mean that it is going to be 1 + 1 = 2. It could be 1 + 1 = 4, or 1 + 1 = -4. As a matter of fact, this is an area that we're discovering more and more about, that the combination really function as a completely new drug or a new way of working rather than just adding 2 drugs together. And accordingly, we kept it as a separate section and a separate area to discuss it even more. So what are the policy issues that we wanted to discuss within this meeting? One is, what are the preclinical data that will be needed for clinical development? One, and second, what are the models that are needed, both regarding scenarios that would apply and preclinical data could be useful, and second, whether tumor model would apply in this case or don't apply in this case. And as we very well know, some tumor models or some areas of development, such as vaccine, some tumor models may not apply at all other than an immune biology perspective. So is it possible to define the optimum way of moving forward by preclinical development? The second one is, what are the challenges in trial design in immune therapies, and what are the challenges in combination therapies? And when we think of combination therapies, we are thinking of really this area of our patients' response. Yes, we have lots of response in immunotherapy. Yes, we are very excited about it. At the end of the day, at this stage, only 5 to 35% of patients are responding and patients are recurring. So combinations is going to be the name of the game. Most likely, immune therapy is going to be using only in combination work. And when we think of combination, the basket is huge. And that would provide another area and another challenge that we have to be thinking about. This is only a list that has been published by the NCI in 2007. Currently, the list is probably 3 times more. So when we think of potential combinations, somebody that had lots of time on their hand a couple of months ago told me that when they calculated, as our statistician, our institution told me that he calculated the possibility of all these combinations, and to put them together, it will take 300 years. So the question is, if we're going to be reaching a level of optimum therapy in human, what would be the best way, and how could policy help us in put them together, from a clinical trial design to regulation to other issues? So when we think of combinatorial or combinational immune therapy, we're talking about vaccine, we're talking about immune modulators, whether agonists or immune inhibitors. We're talking about the small molecules, we're talking about T-cell therapy, and of course, we're talking about standard therapy, whether chemotherapy and radiation therapy, which all of us now know that there's a major component of immune response that come out of those standard therapies. So the challenges in the combination, which is that second area of the policy issues that we're discussing, again, what are the preclinical data that are needed to move on combinations? What type of combination and how to predict response? What are the clinical trial designs that would be necessary to move this field further rather than waiting 300 years? Could we do it in 10 or 15? And how to enable using combination between different pharma or biopharma? Can we enlarge the pre-competitive space so pharma and pre-pharma can start, pharma and biopharma can start working together early on rather than developing the agents towards phase 2 or even phase 3 and start thinking of combination? And the last thing, when we think of combination, we think of course, health economics and financial adverse events. So when we think of now that every molecule is costing $100,000 per year, and when we're starting to combine, that's $200,000 per year, patients are living for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, that's $1 million per patient, only a cost of the drug. So the question then, what would be those areas that we need to address to be able to make this more palatable, more usable, and more sustainable? The third area of the policies issues that we will be discussed here are expanding the opportunity for collaboration and information exchange. And when we talk about this, data is extremely important. Data exchange is extremely important. And trans-IT interoperability is going to be a major area that we need to think about, particularly between the different pharmas and governmental agencies, and of course, academic centers. And when we talk about this, we also talk about the pre-competitive space and how to enhance this further. Finally, one of the last ones is implementation in clinical practice. When we talk about implementation of the clinical practice, we talk about technology assessment and how we can translate this into third-party payers. Adverse events in immunotherapy, and this is a major area that is going to be of major importance, particularly that immune therapy adverse events are not the regular, not the usual, usually don't happen acutely. 3+3 design might not be the applicable part. However, are there going to be long-term immune therapy side effects that we have to think about, and how we think about those and how it's going to impact the field? And finally, physician training needs in immune therapy, and patient and family training and education on thinking about how to deal with immune therapeutic agents. Finally, the value of immune therapy and combination therapy. We talked about the price. So how do we determine the value, and how do we move forward, and how do we put this in the hands of CMS or other third-party payers? So when we talk about the targeted audience for our workshop, we're talking about policymakers, we're talking about regulatory agency, vis-a-vis clinical trial and clinical trial designs and approval. Afterward, we're talking about funding agencies, what is needed, where it's needed, and how we put it, and what are the areas that needs to be funded, and think about that we haven't thought about. Drug developers, pharma and biopharma industry, third-party payers, CMS, private insurance companies, and others, and advocacy groups. I really look forward to these 2 days. We have a phenomenal group of experts that are here. I hope that this would be a discussion type of workshop. We will have lots of discussion, and actually the last session in this, which is tomorrow, is going to be purely discussion, open panel and audience. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I hope you will have a great time, and I hope I'll hear lots of contributions from everyone. Now I will get back to the audience, Dr. Caligiuri, or who's the chair? Oh, you're just chair. Okay. I'm sorry. Deb, for chairing the session. Thank you very much.